I look at these traffic angels and these guides, and sometimes like border collies, we're going down this path and they're like knocking us to make sure we're staying on the right track. And we think that's like painful, and they're just trying to nudge us to go where we're supposed to go.
Hi, everyone. It's Holly Hall from The Intelligent Soul. Today, I have a special guest. She's an author, an inventor, a songwriter, an explorer of metaphysical mysteries. She has written the ebook you can get on her website called The End. And she also has a podcast, a producer of Life is a Trip, the reincarnation stories. And she also has a group. Welcome, Brownell Landrum.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be considered an intelligent soul, maybe.
You are. You
And
have
I'm
to
happy to
be.
be in the company of intelligent souls. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want everybody to go to your website, BrownellLandrum.com. I'll have all of her links down below. If you're watching it, well, anywhere that you're watching it, there's a myriad of places that people will be watching and listening to this show. But let's first start about The End. How was this inspired? Why do you feel that this is important for people to read? Enough that you've put it out there for free.
Right. And I really do want as many people to read it as possible. And in fact, I started out calling it The End, and then I kind of added a little bit of a subtitle, which is a love story to the universe.
Mhm.
And it really is kind of this gift that I want to give, because it was a gift given to me. It was an experience that I've been through in the last, 12, 14 months that has just changed everything in my life. And as you can see, I'm not a young person. So to go this many years of this much exploring and then have something so profound happen in the last year that led to me writing the story, and then writing the story changed so much in my life. And it's been incredible because I've had people say, oh, they think it could be a college course. And I know you said it really like kind of shifted your thinking and opened up your mind. And, this is the whole purpose, I think, of being here, is help other people open their minds. So yeah, what happened was a little over a year ago, my landlord, I was living in Colorado, my landlord wanted to raise the rent 50%, 50, 50. And I was
Wow.
like, okay, I've got to do something different. And so I went on this kind of path. And up until that time, so much of my life had been running into obstacle, running into obstacle. Like I want this goal. And I read everything about how to manifest. Everything was still being blocked in my life. And this was no different. I was like, okay, what do I do? I can't stay where I am. And so I thought, well, I'll go to Italy. And I thought, okay, I had it all set up. I was going to go to Italy for a year. And then, oops, they're not even taking applications for visas, not even taking applications. So
Mm.
I went, I thought, well, I can go for 3 months as a visa, tourist visa. And then I had to go somewhere else for 3 months. And so I thought, well, where am I going to go that's outside of the European Union from January to March? And I looked at Tunisia, which is a surprising place for a lot of people to consider to go. And yet I had a fan of my original novels. They're called DUET novels from Tunisia. And so it kind of was on my radar, and it's only 92 miles from Sicily. So I thought, I'll go there. And I found this really incredible place to stay. And that's super, super affordable. And so I thought, okay, I'll just go there for 3 months and then go back to Italy. And all of this stuff I'm thinking I'm in charge, right? I'm thinking I'm making these decisions. And I was like, okay, I'm going to write this story. And I'm starting out thinking it's fiction, right? I'm just writing like, who are the characters, which I know we're going to talk about, like writing fiction and how you develop characters. So I'm writing and thinking who the characters are. And I'm writing it from the point of view of what I call the upstairs, right? So there's like a group up here that's like looking at us going, what are they doing down there? And how are we what's my role in their life?
And you call
And
them
I
the
was
team. You
writing
call
it.
them the team,
I
right?
call them the team, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm writing it from this point of view of the team. And the team included two what I call traffic angels. So if one person's
I
here
like
and
that.
one person's here, how do they get them together, right? How they help us along our path. And then two are kind of what I would guess what you'd call guides, sort of higher self, sort of guides, sort of in that in between. And as I'm writing it, I'm realizing I'm not writing it, they're writing it. They're telling me who they are. And so, and I'm sure you're going to ask about the story, but the story is, as I said, it's a love story. And it's a love story to the universe. And but it's also a personal story. It's the most personal I've ever gotten in my writing. And they were literally trying to say, how do you get an American woman in Colorado to meet a British man in Tunisia? And guess what you have to do? It's like a bird. You got to kick them out of the nest. And they kicked me out of the
Shake
nest
things
of
up.
Colorado. Yeah. And so that led to writing the story. And then you can ask more about like, okay, how did that lead to their role in my life?
Did the story start before you met the man? So did you start
No,
writing before you met him, or you wrote as you were meeting him?
I had met him about 2 weeks before I started writing the story. And when I met him, it was really profound. And I know we all know that's like, right? You meet somebody and you know on some level it's guided or destiny or a soul contract or something because like but I met him. He was actually involved with someone else. So it was forbidden. And I'm not one of those people who go there, right? I'm not going to compete with another woman. I mean, just not going to do it. And I told him that from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I only met him, but we talked and talked and talked. We had 2 full days of talking 8 hours a day. And because there couldn't be a romance, although there was chemistry like crazy, there could, because that when he left, and that was end, right? The end. That I felt such a loss when he was gone. Like, and I don't know about you, but when something's not over, at least my lesson isn't over, it's going to keep playing. And you can sit there and say it's over, over, but if you're still learning, and if you're still hanging on, there's still a lesson to learn. So yeah, I started
Absolutely.
writing it thinking it was over.
So really the book is to show people, the ebook that you can find on her website is to show people how there are a team, sort of traffic angels that guide us to meet people that we're probably supposed to meet karmically, that maybe we had a past life with, or we have a contract with, to learn a lesson. Because it's not always, roses and cotton candy and and
Yeah,
rainbows.
butterflies and rainbows and
Yeah, often we have to meet people, and there's usually something that needs to be taken a good look at again because it hasn't been finished yet. It's not final. There's more lessons to learn, and people forget about that unromantic version of it. And that's what I like about your book is because I think it's important for people to know that funny things will happen. Synchronicities, uh, things get canceled. You end up going in a different direction. You thought that you were going to stay in this apartment forever, and you have to leave because you can't afford it, which is too common in the last couple of years now with people. I became nomad as well for similar reasons. Just decided I didn't want to keep an expensive house anymore, and just for the two of us. When people fight this, where these traffic angels keep coming in and trying to redirect you. When you fight against it, we look at that as, why is there so much hardship? Why are so many bad things happening to me? When your book has somebody realize maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe you're supposed to not get that job and not get that apartment and not work. That marriage doesn't work out for a reason. Is that the
it,
message?
That's a big part of the message. In fact, one of my first book I actually wrote was nonfiction, and it's called Five Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. And so when people say everything happens for a reason, it's like, yeah, I wrote the book on it, literally. And so there's so many themes within this short story that one of them is, that if we're attentive, we can be guided along the right path. And we might see it, like you're saying, we might see it as an obstacle or see it as something that's a problem. And maybe it is guiding us. It's kind of like I look at these traffic angels and these guides, and sometimes like border collies, we're going down this path and they're like knocking us to make sure we're staying on the right track. And we think that's like painful, and they're just trying to nudge us to go where we're supposed to go. And so what this led to is, like you said, this nomadic life. I still don't know where I'm going to end up. And I'm probably going back to Tunisia just because I loved it there, and I don't know where from there. And then that may still not happen. So it's been this incredible year of like, what do you guys want? Where are you? And feeling the energy from them when they're guiding me where I'm supposed to go. And with some of my things, I want to tell everybody, Holly, definitely, I had a reading with her on my astrological stuff. It was so powerful. And we really did get into this whole idea of you know, paths and destiny and fate and free will and all of this stuff. So we think we might know something, and she knows now. Of course, most of my astrological stuff is that, you know, things can change and we can go off road and we can create a whole new road for ourselves and our
Yep.
lives as well. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so it's so interesting to see how that happens. And for me, instead of being, okay, here's what I want, you guys on board with it, it's more like, what do you guys want? And when I'm doing what they want me to do, they reward me with this energy, this beautiful influx of energy. Now, sometimes I'm like, okay, what do you want? And I get crickets, you know, so it's not
From your
always
team. Yeah.
from the team, you know,
Which is like your
but
guides. Some people would call it higher self or your guides, or
yeah,
maybe a
it's whatever.
pre-scripted
Yes,
path.
and absolutely. And for me, what's also really interesting is that the team is not just this, you know, because the original team was his people and my people getting together and figuring out how to get us together, right?
Yeah.
So it was uniting of like you, if whatever goals you might have or anyone watching or listening might have, go, okay, well, this was somebody else, so we all have to be on board, right? All the factors have to be on the mind, body, and spirit, if you will. Um, and yet also I know this is transcending just his, it's transcending the story between me and this man, which I won't spoil too much. But
Well, because now you're thinking there might be a bit of a sequel to it, because careful what you wish for. You can elaborate on this, but you had asked to have you asked your team, can we meet again? I want to meet this person again. Somehow they just heard that you wanted to meet an ex again, and it sounds like more people showed up besides him.
it's been so interesting. I mean, really, if you, I can't even explain. I mean, again, I'm not a young person, so for this to be new for me, and it's because I just basically abandoned everything that I thought I was going to plan, and let them take over. And that's not really true because I'm doing a whole bunch of things. But as far as like in the big picture of my life, I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, what do you guys want? And you sit there and sometimes you just get the popcorn and watch what they want to make happen. Because this one week, I started hearing from all of these exes. I mean, people from many,
Yeah.
many
So you didn't
decades
just hear from
ago.
him, the one ex, you heard from a whole bunch of them.
I did. And it was like, and this one, and this one, and one of them was somebody I just kind of had a crush on and I never dated. And all of a sudden he's coming forward. And one was a guy that I dated ages ago. And he's like, I just want to tell you, I'm sorry for how I treated you. I mean, like, so, and I know that was them. Like, it had to be them.
Yeah.
It was just
Because
too
you
much.
just put it out there, and then you got like a just a flood of
Onslaught. Yeah.
exes coming in. So this
Yeah.
makes me wonder, what's your belief system around this? There are people that believe that you scripting will work to create something that you want in your life. So you literally script out what you want, and then you write this every day. You write the same thing every day, every day, every day, and that you can rewrite your life with this scripting. Have you
Um,
heard of that?
Yes, I've definitely heard about it. And there's two kind of got two answers to that. One is writing helps so much. I know you're going to get into asking me about my podcast and my group. It's called Life is a Trip, Reincarnation and Afterlife Stories. And it really is about stories. And
Hmm.
one of the things that's the kind of the rule within it is they can be fictional or factual.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, wait a minute, I thought it has to be all truth. And I'm like, no, sometimes fiction opens minds more than, you know, than nonfiction.
Yeah.
And so I tell people when they're looking at thinking, what are my role in my team? This is what I did, or what are my past lives or whatever. Just start writing and don't edit whether you think it's true or not, because that's your left brain and that's going to be restricting you in terms of whether you can prove it or not and all those kind of criteria the left brain does. Just open it up and start writing. So I'm big believer in writing, and I'm sure we can come back to that. And whether it's true or not, just write. As far as scripting and saying, this is what I want, this is what I want, I think that there are times when that's really helpful because I think we need to be clear about what we want.
Yeah.
And I also think there are times when it's telling them and they're going to go, you keep saying, I want to go this way, and they want you to go that way. And
Yeah.
that can cause a lot of problems in your life. You know, and it's easier sometimes to go, where do you want me to go? And I'll just, I'll just I'm living in a hotel. Like, I don't know where I'm going to be next. And it's scary. I'm not going to lie. It's scary because I don't know what anything's going to be. I don't know what my next relationship is going to be. I don't know what's going to circle back or move forward or be new. I don't know any of that. But it's also kind of freeing that I don't have to be so sure about what I want and force the world to accommodate me.
And how long have you been doing this for? How long have you been nomad for?
For 14 months, I guess.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been doing it for three and a half years now. I know this is a book you wrote a while ago, but I think a lot of people would like to know at least a couple of reasons why bad things happen. Because I think that's a common, like, why does this happen to me? You wrote the book on it. So what
I
is your
literally wrote the book on it, right? And I'll tell you a little story about it that before I get into answering your question, which is, you may have heard of the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Yeah.
It was written by Rabbi Harold Kushner, and I had the honor of meeting him in right after I written my book, and it hadn't even been published yet. And so I met him, and he was so gracious and offered to read my book. And his response was that he doesn't think things happen for a reason; he thinks it's random.
Oh,
Yeah. And I always wish I could have had like a national debate with him, because that would have been such an interesting discussion. But what it did is it got me to do some research on, like, what about the people who do believe things happen for a reason versus the people who don't. And I found that the people who do are much happier than the people who don't. There's some great research by a psychologist named Albert Bandura, who talks about self-efficacy. And when we believe things happen for a reason, that means we have more control and more influence on the things that are happening.
and not
And it
take it
gives more
personally,
meaning.
not be a
Yes, and it's
victim.
more meaning to life, right? It's like, okay, this has got meaning, as opposed to it has no meaning. And so therefore I'm out of control and things can just happen. So the first reason is what I call subconscious sabotage. And it also kind of, when you're talking about the scripting, this is where this can kind of come in, is we have to know our bodies. Our body is our subconscious. That was the biggest revelation for me when I was writing the book, is like, oh, the body is the subconscious. And what I mean by that is that, we have a soul that existed before we were born, that will exist after we die. And during each lifetime, that soul chooses a body and becomes us. Now, if you don't believe in reincarnation, you can still believe the soul, and you can still believe it chooses a body and becomes you. And one of my favorite examples of that is to look at it and say, what if my soul had chosen your body, or vice versa, right? It would be a different person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you have the higher self or soul or superconscious or super ego, whatever term you want to use. And then when they come together, that's the conscious, or the ego, or the conscious in terms of Jung. And then the subconscious is the body, and it has its own energy, its own interests. It's connected to the earth in the way that our soul isn't, right? That's why we come here, is so we can learn the world, the way of the earth. So have you ever heard of the Huna religion? Do you know what that is?
The which religion?
Huna, Huna.
No.
It's really interesting. It's Polynesian, and basically it's psychology 101. And the thing that they do differently is they say to have a name for your body. So you have a name for your higher self. So you have your name, Holly, but then what you have, your soul has a name and your body has a name.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Some indigenous have that too. They have their spirit name, and then they have their own name, and yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And it's so powerful. And from a psychology standpoint, it's powerful. And when I first got the name for my body, everything changed in my life. That's when you're connected to your body. So if you're not connected to your body, and I do recommend everybody get to know their body and get the name. Generally, he or she will tell you, or they will tell you what the name is. You can't tell them. The body sabotaging you is what I'm trying to get to.
Okay.
And so getting to know the name of your body will prevent this from happening. So I'm giving you the solution and the thing.
Right.
But so an example of a bad thing is, this happened to a friend of mine many years ago. She was a workaholic, and she was going to work all weekend, and on a Labor Day weekend. And her body was like, no, you're not. And so she goes out to get Thai food, comes out of the restaurant and trips and sprains her ankle, and she's in bed all weekend. That's her body going, no, not going to do it.
This happens a
So
lot, and this is how I teach my clients as well, is that if you feel like you don't want to go to that party or you don't feel like going out with that friend, unless astrologically I've said take every, opportunity because that opportunity will lead to another one. Often I just test it and I'll like, okay, I'll go, and then the party gets canceled. That usually happens. Or it's supposed to be an outdoor party and it's rained on. So now I just go, no, I don't want to do it. And then something else happens like, oh, I'm glad I didn't go. Reason.
definitely. And so again, and sometimes it might be a higher self, which is, also related
Exactly.
to, which is that if yes, you missed that light and you're mad because you're going to be late for work, but maybe you also missed an accident that you could have that could have happened.
Exactly. And you'll never know that.
Right. And sometimes you
Mhm.
don't. Yeah. Sometimes you
Yeah.
have no clue that that's happening. So the subconscious can sabotage you. It also, though, if you're doing like the scripting, or maybe it's the party, maybe you can negotiate with the body and say, okay, I want to go to the party for an hour. Is that good enough? And then when we get home, we can do whatever you want. Or I've
Mhm.
got to finish this project, and talk to your body and say, I got to finish this project, but boy, if we get it done, well, and help me focus, then I'll get it done sooner. So
So
that's
that's
one of
one
the
of the things that are bad. Like people would think it's bad, but it
right.
really isn't bad. It's just you're being redirected.
Yes, or you just have to know your body and know how to work with your body to get it to cooperate in the things that maybe you do need to get done, right?
Good.
So subconscious sabotage is one of them. Karma is another one, and that can be this life or another life. In the book, I don't really talk about past lives. It's just wherever you're picking up the karma from.
Yeah.
The thing
So,
that they all have in common, and one of them is that something good, it's maybe it was actually a blessing in disguise or a silver lining, right?
yeah.
Yes, maybe you went through this trauma, but then you became a trauma advisor and you're helping other people now. All kinds of things. I mean, this sounds really awful to people who don't understand, but there are so many people, and literally just recently somebody commented on a post and said getting cancer was the best thing that ever happened to them. And that's not
Oh, yeah. You
unusual,
hear those stories.
all the time,
TED
right?
Talk
Because
is
it
full
hit
of
them.
those stories.
Yes, yes. And so one of the big messages in the book is that you get to the why and you can get to the healing, and that all of the whys, what they all have in common is to get you to change something, right?
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
like those guides and knocking you with the border collie down on the path. Sometimes it's that. And if we keep not listening, then they're going to keep hitting harder and harder until we
Yeah,
start
because they're trying to get you back into the groove of where
listening.
you're
Yeah,
supposed to be.
yeah. So
Because
that's
you,
the
because
full
you,
circle.
you
So
chose that. They
yeah.
didn't choose it. You chose this path, and they're there to help you. The interesting thing you were talking just a little bit ago about meaning, that there's a meaning for everything, and that study showed that if people believe there was a meaning, they seem to manage life on a psychological level a lot better. And that's in my book, 101 Answers from the Universe. One part is like, what's the meaning of you? What's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of me? And the download that I received, I don't know if you'll resonate with this, that I received around it is that we give it meaning. A marriage breaks up. There's five people can have five similar marriages and five similar breakups, and each person will give it a different meaning. And there's been psychological studies where they'll watch the same movie and everybody will walk away with a completely different meaning. Some people will say that's the stupidest movie I ever saw. Some people will say that's the best thing that ever happened to me. It really changed my perspective on life. So that individual person gave the meaning to the movie. The movie did not give them the meaning.
And as a writer, that resonates with me so much, right?
Right.
Is
Yeah.
that that you can write a story, and like your reaction to my story, The End. And I also have my trilogy coming out called We Meet Again. That's about a famous couple from history that's reincarnated today to fulfill a prophecy that'll change the world.
Ooh.
That one, I can't wait for more people to read it. It's coming out really soon. And so it's got its own, there's so many different themes that I might have intended. What I can't wait to find out as a writer, and your interpretation of The End, the love story to the universe, is that's what I want to hear as a writer, is what did it mean to the reader, and how did the
Yeah.
reader interpret it, and how did it
How did it
affect
move
everybody's
them?
life?
Right.
Yes, exactly. It's like I'm not trying to force down that path. It's like you got to interpret this. I'm like, what did you think about that? Like, and what can you add to the story? That's what makes it really
I think
powerful.
my biggest takeaway with the end was the traffic angels. Like I giggled and I was like, yeah, I like to put a face or faces to this redirectional thing that it's not just me or my higher self or God or whatever anybody else wants or bad luck, right? There's actually an energy of an entity that is helping keep me on track. I liked the thought of that. That was my big takeaway from that book.
Thanks. And, one thing that really was coming clear to me is they're trying too, right? Like they're not infallible. They're not all powerful, infallible. They're trying to help too. And so from the person, that's what was so much fun about writing it and understanding is like they're looking at us going, we're trying to help you. We're doing our best. And they're trying too, right? So it's all a complexity that's all about working together with them. And that it's not them as a team. This is one of the messages I got from them just like within the last few days. It's not just them as the team. I'm part of that team.
Oh
It's
yeah,
us as a
yeah,
team.
yeah. Well,
We're a collaborative team together. And that changed my point of view too. It's like, okay, I'm part of them, not just my higher self or whatever, but me right here now living in this life as Brownell Landrum, I'm kind of part of that too. So I'm still absorbing that.
yeah, I like that. Let's talk about your group. Life is a Trip. I know you talked a little bit about that, but your podcast as well. So what is the intention behind your podcast? Where can they find it? Is it a visual like on YouTube? Is it on Spotify as an audio? And what types of people are you interviewing people on that?
No, it's not an interview podcast.
Okay.
It's stories. I don't know if you know the Modern Love podcast, but that's a New York Times podcast. And theirs is just stories, people reading stories. So you just go and you listen to stories. And so I kind of call this like a metaphysical modern love.
Oh, I like it.
And so I have the Facebook group called Life is a Trip Reincarnation Stories, and you can recognize it by a stained glass kind of upbeat, happy look. There's
Yeah.
all different kinds of groups with different energy, but I wanted mine to be happy and positive and open. Um, and it's for the group is for people to share stories, to ask questions, to get, to open up dialogue about stories. And then I wanted it to evolve, and it's evolved into a podcast where people have written stories that are either short film scripts or short stories that have been recorded either by the writer themselves or sometimes by groups of actors. And then we record them and we put them up there. So you just go up there and like, okay, I want to listen to a little story before bed as I'm driving or whatever. And so it's a collection of stories. And as I mentioned before, they can be fictional or factual. So we have everything from
Good.
some pretty serious content to I've got an upcoming one with the funny ghost story, you know. And some of the writers are professional writers that have never written about reincarnation. And then some of them are people that have a story like, oh, I have this past life regression or I've had a session. And now they turn it into an actual story, like with a beginning, middle, and end, just like a writer would do. And the goal is that I just think there need to be more stories out there. I think that these kinds of stories can change the world, and I want to celebrate other writers, not just myself, that are writing them.
Yeah, I love how you said that because it historically in specifically very native type cultures or there was always the grandmother had a story or the grandfather had a story and then they passed it on and when they became grandparents my great great grandmother started and there comes to a point where you're like, is it real? Is it not real? It really doesn't matter because it's being passed on and there's always a moral to the story and a lesson. And after 3, 4, 5 2 generations, who knows how many times it's been tweaked and changed, but it's the storytelling that everyone's gathering around and listening to the story. Yeah, we've lost that. We don't have that anymore, not as a group, as a collective anyways. And the other thing is when I do past life regression hypnosis with my clients, usually they go in about three lifetimes. I say the same thing as you did. They'll be like, well, how do I know this is real? How do I know this is happening? And I say it doesn't really matter. What matters is, does it resonate with you? Does it feel like something that is meaningful to you? Are you getting an aha moment from it? That's what matters. And as soon as you start overthinking it, you're going into the wrong side of your brain. And now it's over. We can't, it's not going to
Exactly.
continue that way.
Exactly. I mean, I've said like if my group, because we're over 10,000 people now, right? And I've said if my group had 25 people who all thought they were Marilyn Monroe in a previous lifetime,
Yeah.
they would all have different stories and it would all have different lessons and it would all be meaningful. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to argue about who's the real Marilyn Monroe, right?
Right.
Um, and so whatever that message is, and tying it into the team, and the fact that we're getting messages all the time, they could just be saying, like, for example, I may not have that many past lives on this planet. I may have had more planets and another lifetimes in a different planet or a different dimension. But I might come up with a story of a past life that'll help me now. And
Hmm.
so, do I have to prove that I lived in Belgium in the 1800s and what war and what town and who my family was? I mean, that's fine if that's your path, but really what matters is what was that lifetime about, and what am I supposed to learn now, and why am I getting this message at this time? So yeah, exactly. That's and yeah, turn off the rules, if you will, and just write the story or come up with the
Yeah.
story, or come up with the memory.
We Meet Again is your previous book, but now you're writing a trilogy as well. Why would someone want to read We Meet Again? What would that do for someone who would read that?
Well, yeah, I'm launching the trilogy as you said, and I've been working on it for years, so it's especially fun to see it finally kind of get out into the world. It's kind of like a Da Vinci Code meets Outlander. So if you know those, Da Vinci
Yep.
Code, obviously a big mystery solving, following clues, figuring things out, and then Outlander is a kind of an epic love story. And then you tie in reincarnation to it. So that's kind of thing. So it is about a famous couple from history. I'll give you a little spoiler is I went to Italy for a reason. So,
Okay.
um, and boy, was that interesting to connect to that energy. And some people are like, oh, well, aren't all your stories all your past lives? I said, no, probably not. But, you never know which ones could be. It starts out with a modern day couple, and there's some connection right away, which I think we all know. If you meet somebody from a previous lifetime, there's something there that you go, okay, ding, 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 ding. Even if it's bad, like warning signs, it could still a ding, ding, ding. And then they start remembering a past life in the 1930s, in Brazil, and they're protecting this valuable object. And then we start going further back into a lifetime in the Renaissance in Europe, starting out in Austria, and then they go up to England and they travel with Giordano Bruno. I don't know. Do you know who Giordano Bruno was by any chance?
No.
He's one of my greatest heroes in history. If you go to Rome, there's a statue of him in the Campo de Fiore. He was burned at the stake by the church because he said the universe is infinite and the earth moves around the sun. He also believed in reincarnation, so I will add that. He was just such a hero in so many ways. And we also have some evidence that he inspired Shakespeare. So how did that meeting happen, right? And
Mm.
we know he spent 2 years in England. We have a pretty good idea that he spent some time with John Dee, if you know who John Dee, famous
Heard of,
astrologer.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, he was he was Queen Elizabeth's astrologer. And he was
Right.
also the original 007. A lot of
Oh
people
yeah,
might not
that's
know.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's such a character. And so my characters meet them and they start finding out this information. And then it goes back to another lifetime in during the Black Plague and the time of the Decameron. If you know the Decameron story, I won't spoil it more, but it's probably the definitive book on the Black Plague. And then there's another lifetime before that. And it also traces all the way back to Pythagoras, who's another one of my heroes.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and Pythagoras, just as a FYI, we all know the Pythagorean theorem in geometry. But he was also maybe one of the original big thinkers on reincarnation. He
Yeah.
also influenced Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. They were all Pythagoreans. Um, he his teachings are just phenomenal. Very egalitarian, very men and women are equal. One of the criteria to join the Pythagorean initiation is humor, which I loved. Like, you have to have fun with this. It's not all serious. So I tie all that together and follow this mystery. So this couple is trying to figure out, like, oh crap, if we've got this purpose, are we going to fulfill it this lifetime? And are we going to get in our own way? And so you kind
That
of
sounds
follow
like
all
a
this like breadcrumbs to figure out what's going to
Well, it
happen?
sounds like a fascinating book, and there's it sounds like people can learn a lot about history while they're
Yeah,
reading it as
there's
well.
definitely a lot of that.
I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
So
I
it's
like that
fun.
quite a bit. And
Yeah.
you had we had a talk before, and you had said that we were talking about the Enneagrams because I just kind of got introduced to this. You answer a whole whack of questions, and it gives you your 1 to 0, 1 to 9, and that's a
Right.
personality trait. And you had said that you use the Enneagrams to create characters
I
in
do. I
books.
do. And, I had another business before where I was an expert in DISC. I mean, you could say I'm probably one of the world's leading experts in DISC, which is the other personality, one of the other personality things. However, I find Enneagrams more useful for my characters. One of the things that a lot of writing experts will say is that if you have to know your character's fear, desire, and misbelief. Like what are they afraid of? What are they missing? And what do they really want down underneath it all? And
Yeah.
Enneagrams, especially a particular website that I like to use, really gets into that. I think we were talking at one point about like, okay, what's the difference between, a one wing two and a one wing nine, for
Yeah.
example? And my characters, just as a little, Easter egg spoiler or whatever, he is an artist and he is a four wing three. And the four is kind of the more live in the moment artist kind of character. The three is very successful and ambitious. So
Right.
if he was, a one wing, I mean, a four wing five, he would be totally different. But a four wing three this is a successful creative person. She is a one wing two, which makes her very organized and also she feels like she has a big purpose in life, and that purpose is to help people. It's not just to do stuff. It's to
Right.
it's to help others.
Right.
So I find them really fascinating way to understand characters and get to that depth and to go, okay, now that I know that this person's a seven wing eight, okay, that seven is live in the moment and have a lot of fun, and eight means they like to tell other people to do that too. It just
Yeah.
gives you some
I
dimension
love
to the
it.
character. Yeah,
I love
yeah.
it. You are like, where do you find the time to do all this reading to know everything that you know, or you just have an incredible memory as well?
Um, when I'm researching a book, then that's when I'm spending a lot of
That's
time
why it
getting
takes you
it.
so long to write
That's
it.
what takes me so long, right? I mean, my first novels they cranked out because they weren't really a mystery, so I didn't have to set. They're a love story, and they go back to multiple past lives, and they were such a pleasure to write. They just didn't require like a whole lot of research on history and laying out clues and really plotting so much detail. But as any writer who's listening knows, you can get kind of caught up in the research and then not get to the writing, so you have to
I
balance
bet
that.
the book ends
Yeah,
up being like 750 pages. It's almost
yeah,
supposed to be
yeah, yeah. Or you're spending
320.
like, 3 years doing the research when you should be finishing the writing and the story. So
I
it
love it.
you can do that. Yeah.
So I have a question that I ask most of my podcast guests, and that is, what is the, we kind of touched on a lot of it here, but maybe you
Yeah.
can wrap it up in a couple of sentences. What is the meaning of life for you? What does that mean to you? What is the meaning
I
of life?
think for me, one of my kind of missions in life is that if we can get to the why, we can get to the healing. So there's a very much a thread in what I write is like you start understanding that it happened for a reason, whatever it is, and what's the why. So my characters are going to get to their why. That's also ties to the Enneagram and the fear, desire, misbelief, right? That leads them down certain paths. And if you get to the why, that's when everything can open up and you can find more meaning. So I think that's
I
probably
love
the
that. So it's not
answer.
really the answer, it is the question that is most important, which
Yes.
if anybody has ever watched the movie, is it To the Galaxy?
Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah, Guardian to the Galaxy. There's a scene in there. If you watch it, the answer is 42. And when you watch that
Oh, yes,
scene,
yes. The
you'll
Hitchhiker's Guide to
understand
the
what I
Galaxy.
mean.
Yes, 42. Life, meaning in the
Yeah.
universe, or whatever
Yeah,
is
because they didn't
one
have
of
the
those.
right question. That wasn't the question. They needed a better question. And that's where
Yeah.
you got to be really careful, careful what you wish for. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show, Brownell Landrum. You guys, all of the information will be underneath the video or in the audio. You can watch this almost anywhere. Share, share, share. Join her group. Read her book, especially the free one, The End, that is on there. Look forward to your trilogy that's coming out and your travels. I mean, geez, maybe you should write a blog about just your travels alone, but that won't keep you any busier than you already are, right? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on The Intelligent Soul, Brownell.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, thank you for listening to the show. May the stars be with you and may all your dreams come true.